Hello. It looks like
Hi.
we're live here.
Yeah. How you doing?
I'm okay. It's a little loud in my space right now. They are demanding baby beluga, um, but I'm here.
Oh yeah, no worries. Oh, do what you got to do. Um, I'm just gonna see if I can find the slides from last time. How's your week going?
It's crazy busy. There's a lot of stuff shipping, but it's okay. We're getting through it. How are you doing?
What's it called?
Oh, pretty good. I'm just kind of taking it, day by day, and um, you know, um, just kind of trying to stay on top of the work as it comes in. And there's some types of work that I'm, like kind of letting fall a bit to the wayside.
Yeah, well, you got to do what you got to do, right? Like
Yeah.
reasonable expectations in this time.
Like a lot of the kind of continuous output work I'm not really doing,
Yeah.
like just issue crushing and whatever. But I'm doing more like the project work, like when people come in with a specific ask,
Yeah. Yeah. Well, a lot of the asks are more immediately urgent anyway, so it makes sense. I think that's pretty consistent across the team.
Yeah, sort of just like people have a project, they need docs, they have a deadline. I find that just getting that stuff done, um, that's pretty much all I can get done. So
Yeah, right. Like
so be it.
that's enough. Yeah, I've been really grateful for the attitude coming out of the leads.
So Neil is trying to join. Doesn't seem like he's. I don't see. Oh, I see other people, but not Neil in the waiting room, which I wonder what that's all about. Let's see.
So I am here, Andrew. This is Kate, but I have no idea why my video works sometimes and not others. I used this thing this afternoon and it worked fine, but right now, no. I don't know.
Okay. Um, is that Neil's partner, Kate?
No, Kate Twiss.
Oh, right. Sorry, my mistake. I got confused because we're just troubleshooting a technical thing. Neil's gonna try to restart.
Wait a minute, maybe I need to turn my video on.
Oh yeah, it's not enabled by default for this meeting. You have to turn it on when you come in. There you are.
Here I am.
So we're gonna, off the top, we're gonna keep our video just as a point of kind of meeting etiquette. We're just gonna keep our audio off and our video off for now until we get rolling. So you can always just click on stop video and then start it again once we get through these technical things here. Okay. Okay, I might need you to help me with something, Angela.
I am here. I am present.
Oh, okay. Yeah, Neil's having, for some reason, like I can't seem to get Neil onto the Zoom call.
In the waiting room, do you see any people that don't have names attached to them but have like, just wait for baby Beluga, that have long strings of numbers or anything like that?
No.
Is he maybe using a different email address that's not associated with his name for a Zoom account?
I don't know. I'm just gonna see if I can get a URL to this meeting.
Hey, Andrew.
Hi.
Oh.
Hi, Patrick.
Hey guys, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, we can hear you. We're just troubleshooting a technical issue.
Okay. I think what I'm going to do is just probably turn off my camera for now and mute myself, but ready to go whenever you guys are.
Did you grab that URL, or do you need some help with that, Andrew?
I sent him. Oh, there he is. There he is. Hi, Neil. Looks like he made it into the meeting.
All right, Andrew, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me? Now we're gonna have to get the audio sorted out.
Andrew, can you hear me?
Nope.
Neil, can you hear me?
I can hear Neil.
Yeah, I can hear Neil as well, but I don't think he can hear us.
Yeah, I can hear. I can
All right,
hear
can you
Neil,
hear me
but
now?
I can hear you, Neil. But can you hear us?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Let's see. Yeah, chat.
All right, what about now?
I can still hear you. You're a little quieter than you were. Can you hear us?
Can you hear me now?
Yep. Can you hear us though, Neil? I think that's the issue. It may, oh. Are you hearing us now, Neil? Or can you hear me at least?
Yes, I hear somebody. Andrew, is that you?
That's me, Patrick.
That's Patrick.
Ah, Patrick. Hey, how are you?
I'm good. How about you?
Very good. Okay, can everybody else hear me?
Yep.
Okay, good.
All right, we're good here. Yeah.
All right,
Audio
we're good.
and video.
Okay, when this is over, I want everybody to buy Andrew a drink. He deserves it.
Oh yeah, that's right. We talked about having a virtual beer tonight as part of this call. So if anyone has anything that they want to drink, by all means, go to the fridge, bring it over. It'll be, yeah, you know, it'll come in handy, I'm sure. All right, my little saga is not over quite yet though, because the next thing I'm going to do is share my screen.
And here I was hoping I'd get a beer for my virtual Star Wars background.
It's really dope. I was impressed. All right, so share.
All right, Patrick, how's that?
Yeah. Oh, very nice. By the way, did you get to see the happy face with your telescope?
Did I get to see the happy face? I don't think so. Tell me what you're referring to.
Supposedly there was some alignment where I think Venus was involved in the moon, and it was going to be, it would look like two dots in the sky and then a very slender crescent underneath, forming a happy face.
I think I remember reading about that, and if it's the one I'm thinking of, we missed it. We're actually in the process of moving to Vermont.
Oh, wow.
Which is nice, but the problem with Vermont weather is that it's always a shot in the dark, so to speak.
Oh.
Sorry.
Does that mean you'll have better viewing, less light pollution?
It means that when the viewing will be good, it will be outstanding. No light pollution. The problem is we're talking Vermont, so in fact we came home this morning and it snowed this morning.
Oh.
So that's why I say you just never know. But I have been there when it's been absolutely spectacular.
Nice. You're getting Canadian weather.
I don't know. Well, we were in Yellowknife.
Oh, wow.
2 Decembers ago, and everybody told us that we were going to freeze to death, and and enjoy the experience while we were looking at the aurora. And it was actually warmer in Yellowknife than it was in Boston.
Oh, yeah, it can be like that. Was that when you were asking about the polar bears?
That was exactly it.
Right.
So I'm still trying to talk my wife into that.
I'm going to apologize in advance, Neil. I have to duck out. My hockey team's coach and our treasurer, we have to have a meeting at 7 to finish off the season, got cut short and all that. But I did want to come in and listen to this. Is this similar to your Info 4.0 presentation from San Diego a while back?
It is, but it's extended. And Andrew, if you want us to shut up, tell me.
Oh no, please. The only thing I wanted to ask is just to check that people could see my screen that I'm sharing.
Yep.
I see your. Yep, I see it.
Okay, and are you seeing speaker notes or just the actual slide?
Just the slide deck right now.
That's the slide deck.
All right, that's what I like. That's what I like to hear. All right, carry on.
Patrick, short answer is I did a project where the idea was to find out how quickly can you create truly context-sensitive information that will automatically update in real time. And I came up with a model for doing that using Flare in this case, but it could be almost anything. And I think I showed that. No, I did not show that at the Info 4.0 presentation. It was in the contextualization presentation, but I am going to show it tonight.
Okay.
So if you miss it, if Andrew, I assume this is being recorded?
Yes, sir.
All right. And Patrick, if you want to see more, either check the MadCap blog or shoot me an email.
Absolutely. Thanks very much, Neil. I'm going to shut down my camera and mute so I don't get in the way anymore.
All right, well, we're going to give people a few more minutes to join in. And then I'm just checking my schedule for tonight. It looks like we'll go into breakout rooms till around 6:30. So you guys can feel free to do intros in there and ask your fellow documentarians any questions that you might have, or share an experience of what life has been like in the last few months, working remotely, that sort of thing. And then we'll wrap that up around 6:30, and then we'll get Neil to do his presentation. I wonder if now might be a good time, Neil, just to check that you can present.
Yep.
Your presentation.
Yep, absolutely. Hang on one second. Okay, do you see that?
I don't want to do that.
Do you see my PowerPoint slide?
Oh, stop share is what I want to do.
Hang on a second. Let me try this. Slide.
So I just stopped sharing,
Okay.
and now you're sharing.
All right. Let me try one more thing, because there's actually something that I want to demo live. And to do that, I'm just going to present my screen, because I'm going to be switching among a number of different things. So, okay, you should see my slide. And now you should see, hang on a second. You should see, hang on, the one problem with this is that, here we go, the Zoom control panel actually gets in the way at one point. Okay, do you see this?
Yeah, we see.
Really ugly red banner at the top?
Yeah, I see the demo.
All right, then we're good. You're seeing my screen.
Yes, sir.
All right.
All right, so I'll go back into sharing now. And then when I want to go into the breakout rooms, I believe it's up here. All right. All right, I think we'll just wait a few more minutes, a couple more minutes, and then I'll open up the breakout rooms. At any rate, I can always admit people once we've already done the breakout rooms. I think I saw Dorian there joining, so welcome back again, Dorian. Thanks for
Hey, how are you?
thanks for making it again.
Yeah, sure. I also won't stay for the whole time, unfortunately, because I have another call coming up in an hour from now. But yeah.
I think you were one of the brave souls that went all the way to the end of the last meetup with me.
Unlikely. No, it's every Tuesday that at 7 p.m. Eastern I have another meeting.
Oh, right.
Because I probably dropped out. Like,
Okay, I remember that now. It's you have another like kind of a tech meetup thing.
Not really tech, but yeah, more like a social thing during these dire times.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's good to have.
Yeah, indeed.
I'm calling mine the Buddy Support Network. I have it on Friday nights. So there's like 6 of us, and we all get into our war room there.
Yeah, for me it's a choir. I sing in a choir, and since we cannot do rehearsals right now, we meet this way. We don't really sing. I mean, it doesn't work with a lag over the network, but at least we can chat and we can talk.
Oh yeah, there's got to be a way to do that. There's got to be some sort of solution for that real-time musical collaboration.
Ooh, I don't know. It's tough.
You're always getting some kind of a latency, I guess, eh?
Yeah, and it depends on the connection. Different people have different.
Oh, of course.
Access, right? So.
Yeah.
Andrew, do you hear me now?
Yes, sir.
All right, good. I've got my headset off then. All right, good. So how do I get into the breakout rooms?
I'm going to go ahead and initialize that now.
Okay.
And it will automatically, it'll like automatically split people into rooms. I'm pretty sure I can move folks around too. Yeah, Patrick is asking, can I call dibs on going into the room that Neil is in? I'm gonna break them out now, Patrick, and then I'll see if I can move you in if you don't get in there. If you don't win the luck of the draw lottery system. All right, here goes nothing. So yeah, also Angela, maybe you could maybe I could volunteer you to be a moderator in the other room.
Yeah, happy to do that.
And I think I put a couple of little bullet points on the slide about, what we talked about last time. So maybe that will work again.
Okay, I'm joining breakout room 2.
Alrighty. I'm gonna move Patrick over. All right, looks like I'm back in the main session now. And looks like there's people that need to get admitted. Oh, I think I know what happened. Yeah, I was having problems getting some of you into the breakout rooms. Leo, I noticed that were you ever able to join a breakout room, Leo, or?
No, no,
Oh, okay.
I just got in like 10 seconds ago.
Okay, yeah, sorry about that. I was assigning you back and forth to different rooms and trying to make it work, and I'm not sure. Maybe I needed to leave my breakout room and come back out here and then admit you and then put you in. I don't know.
We're good. We're good. Thank you.
Hi, Sashton. Nice to see you again.
Hey. Nice to see you.
All right. Looks like everybody has come back into the meeting, which is wonderful. And we're a little over 6:30. So I think at this point, we'll turn things over to Neil. I'm no longer presenting my screen. Let me just do that first. Is everybody seeing my screen?
Yes.
All right, lovely. I've got my slides here. So welcome to Write the Docs. I think for any of you that are joining us for the first time, this is a meetup, which is an extension of a global community. And it's mostly folks that care about documentation, but really anybody that is, you know, that is kind of adjacent to tech writing and technical communication. So programmers, tech writers, people in support, people in marketing, and anyone else who's interested in giving people a great experience with software. That's kind of what the community is all about. And I guess that's one of the things that makes it, you know, so powerful and interesting is the inclusivity. And that's the thing that really has drawn me to Write the Docs. And one of the things that makes me want to run these meetups and do this moving forward. Yeah, welcome. We've already kind of gone through some of this stuff over the mic meeting, so thank you for doing that and having a great experience. And feel free to share any feedback if anything isn't working for you tonight, and we'll try to take note of that and make it better for next time. So let's get on to our main speaker for tonight. I'm really pleased to have Neil here with us tonight. For those of you that don't know who Neil is president of Hyperworld Services, and he's going to be discussing Information 4.0 with us tonight, both with a technical overview and a demo. So thank you to Neil for being so brave to do a live demo. Those are always a lot of fun. And a little bit more about Neil before we get rolling. Oh, I think I see a message here in the chat. Oh, right, yes. Thanks, Ahmad. Yeah, so what does Neil do with Hyperworld? Well, it's a consultancy. He helps clients define content strategy, pick effective structures, methodologies, and outputs, convert content to online form, and select and learn authoring tools. And he has been in the biz for a while, with many years in training, consulting, development for online help and documentation, e-learning, and mobile. And he specializes in a bunch of well-known apps, such as RoboHelp and Flare and Mimic and Busy Apps. And the list goes on. But I think at this point, I'll let Neil speak for himself, and I'll turn things over to our guest, to Neil Perlin.
All right, thank you very much. Hang on 1 second. I just have to find the, here we go. All right. Hang on a second. Okay. All right, this is also why presenters often get somewhat paranoid. Do you guys see my screen?
Yes, sir.
It says Bits of the Future with a somewhat confused looking guy. Okay.
Yeah, I'm seeing it.
All right, very good. Okay, so yeah, Andrew, thank you for that introduction. Yeah, that pretty much describes me. I've been doing this, I've been in technical communication since February of '79, so I can no longer count that high. But I've been doing this for a long time. I got involved in hypertext in 1986, and I actually created personally the second and third hypertext products ever released in the known universe. One of them, just to give some of you some cheap laughs, was a user's guide to MS-DOS 2.1, and it just went from there. So I've been, as it says, certified in a number of different tools over the years, working online since '86, mobile since '98, XML, etc. Basically, I've been doing all this stuff for a long time, and I like to think I've made enough mistakes that I have a lot of raw material to discuss in presentations. And I have also been involved in a lot of cutting edge or leading edge or bleeding edge stuff. And some of you may know me from the bleeding edge, which was a STEM that I started for the STC, Society for Technical Communication, in 1999, ran that until 2014, wrote a column by that name from 2000 to 2015. So it's been a lot of on the edge stuff. That said, here's what I want to talk about. And before I go any further, let me just ask, because so many people run across so many different things, are any of you familiar with Information 4.0 now or Industry 4.0 now?
Maybe we could do that survey in the group chat.
Anybody?
So if you kind of put your hand up in the group chat. Does that work for you, Neil?
Yeah, except I'm not seeing the group chat. So if you could just tell me how many hands are up, if any. Okay. All right. I just always ask because, like I say, I never know what a particular audience knows, and I don't want to bore people. Let me just run through this, starting with a quick introduction. What is Information 4.0? And for that matter, what's Industry 4.0? And I'll talk about the technology. I'll talk about the implementation issues and how it might affect technical communication and some major issues. So first of all, what is this stuff? There's a model. It's not really emerging anymore. It's been coming out of Germany for about, I think, 7 years or so. It's a model for factory automation. And you can get an overview of it from Wikipedia at this link. But basically what it says is that if you have machines in a factory, machines can talk to each other. They can share things like failure mode information, parts shortages, inventory status, etc. And about basically this, it's anything that's sort of advanced technology. RDF, Resource Description Framework, is the metadata standard that it uses. There's actually a language that's being propounded by TCOM in Germany called IIRDS. And again, very technical IoT, artificial intelligence, deep learning, the cloud, expert systems. Basically, you could rattle off any list of words that you've heard recently in TechCom, and that's pretty much what it is. So one of the principles for Industry 4.0 is exactly this, that we have, hang on a second, assistants that support humans by aggregating and visualizing information. You guys can read this as well as I can. The question I would have here is, does this sound familiar? Because this is what we do as technical communicators to one degree or other. So that said, what's Information 4.0? And Information 4.0, the idea was proposed by two guys in Europe named Ray Gallen and Andy McDonald. as the informational component of Industry 4.0. It's the TechCom component. And it doesn't exist. There's no such thing as Information 4.0. What it is a conceptual umbrella. So the idea is it's literally just an umbrella for a bunch of things that might tie together. And as I say, launched and evangelized by Andy and Ray. These guys started a group called the Information 4.0 Consortium. And I have the link here. Interestingly, the consortium, the European consortium, which is basically the home body, has disbanded or has dissolved, partly because the people who were involved found that they were getting too involved in things like meeting minutia rather than playing with cool technologies. And eventually, I think enough people decided that this was just getting, it sounds cool, but it's not quite what we were looking for. But the idea is that the concept still exists and the website is still up, at least the last time I looked a couple of days ago. And there's a lot of papers and white papers available on it that are worth looking at. Blatant sales pitch, some of them are mine, but there's a number of others as well. And it's still my focus, even though it no longer officially exists. The organizers are trying to come up with a new version of the Information 4.0 Consortium that will be less minutia driven and more technically driven. But the 7 characteristics of this, and that's what I want to focus on. By the way, if anybody has any questions while I'm going through this, just yell out, jump in, be happy to talk to you. One of them is independence. So content has to be separate from formatting. It has to be separate from business rules. It has to be separate from authoring tools. And what this really means is that your content has to be created following best practices according to some standards body. And typically that body is the W3C, the World Wide Web Consortium. But there are other bodies. The information is molecular. And this is kind of a mouthful. Information molecules that self-assemble into compounds based on state vectors. And if you're wondering what on earth this is talking about, basically it's what we do now, which is we write in topics. We no longer write books. For any of you who are FrameMaker users, please don't hurt me. We no longer write 200-page books, but we ideally write 200 one-page long topics that can be strung together to generate a particular output. A compound based on state vectors. State vectors is or are metadata. It's basically what it is. Dynamic, crucial point. The information is continuously updated. In some cases, this doesn't matter. For example, if you're creating an accounting manual or an inventory control manual, there's really no need to continuously update the content. On the other hand, I can think of some examples such as aircraft pre-flight maintenance, where this could be really important. And this will actually be the subject of my demo in a little while. Offered, it's available if needed. I assume you folks have all used software where the online help is dynamic and it's sort of right in your face. And you'd like to be able to turn it off because it's so in your face that it becomes annoying. And the idea here is that the information is there, but it's only presented if it's needed somehow. Ubiquitous. The content has to be available everywhere on any device. Could be a desktop, could be a laptop, could be a tablet. Could be a phone. It could be a non-screen device, potentially like a voice system or a bot. It has to be spontaneous. In other words, the dynamic nature has to be triggered by some sort of context. And we know context. From our perspective, context is context sensitivity. You know, the user is in some application and they're in the widget screen. And they call the widget's dialog box, and they call for help. They click a help button, and the information has to open up that's tied specifically to that context. Again, I'll talk about this. And finally, the information has to be profiled automatically. In other words, and you could split this in any number of ways, but let's say I have a sales reference manual. I'm in the US. Most of you are in Canada. Ahmad is in Saudi Arabia. And the material has to know where the user is in order to configure itself automatically so that you folks in Canada, you don't see anything related specifically to the US or Saudi Arabia, etc. And this has to be done automatically. It's doable now, but none of this stuff is particularly easy, although surprisingly, some things are becoming easier. So let me talk about the characteristics of some of the major components. One of them is independent. Just out of curiosity, is this making sense? Is anybody thinking this is insane?
No, I'm not questioning your sanity yet.
Besides me, okay. I started off as a tech writer in '79, where we wrote everything by hand with number 2 pencils on yellow pads, which got sent to the word processing group, which tried to read my handwriting, which is pretty abysmal. And I'm doing things now that strike me as something out of science fiction. So that said, independent. The content has to be separated from formatting in order to be used on multiple platforms, which means any of you who are Microsoft Word users in particular, although everybody is guilty of this, of doing local formatting rather than using styles, you are setting yourselves up for real problems. Or you're setting me up for consulting work to come in and clean up your local formatting, which I would appreciate. Tool-specific features. Most tools nowadays, the tools that we have nowadays have survived a very rigorous weeding out process, and they're very good. The dogs are long gone, but each tool has certain specific features which are tool specific and therefore may not work on another platform. Business rules to allow this stuff to be used for multiple applications. I would have to tag my content for, let's say, a Flare application. I would have to be able to tag my content as everybody sees this material, but that material is Canadian only. This material is US only. That material over there is Saudi only, etc. So the business rules really control when the material gets used. And again, we have all this stuff now. Formatting, work with style sheets. Tool-specific features. Look at your tools, look at the really cool features that your tools offer and don't use them. Because there's a good chance, or at least research them, to make sure that they're not proprietary to that tool. Business rules. Business rules are going to be a huge issue in how we apply metadata. Molecular, topic-based authoring, which we've been doing for years, but it takes it to a new level. Like I said, we no longer write 200-page books. What we write are 201-page topics, for argument's sake, that can be combined into different outputs, like stringing beads on a wire. And the size of a topic is getting smaller. A lot of tools now are offering micro content. Madcap has offered this for about a year. And the micro content features are getting more and more powerful, and they're getting shorter and shorter, which means that when you guys do a search, a Google search, for example, you know how there's always one topic or one hit that shows up at the top of the list. And this is a fragment, okay, this is a preferred snippet, small chunk of information. But this requires a lot of power and some very rigorous project standards, because the smaller the chunks of content, potentially the more chunks you have. And the more chunks you have, the more memory you're going to need to manage this stuff, the more the need for standards. There's a guy that Patrick and I have met who works for a company in, I think, Denmark. And these guys have something like 900,000 files in their project. And I said, what happens if somebody breaks the rules? And the guy very cheerfully said, we'll just have to take him out and shoot him. Because if you break the rules, the whole project may fall apart. If we need too many fragments, we may not be able to do this as human beings. We may need to go to AI or expert systems to create the fragments through machine-generated content, which means that our roles are going to change. Or somebody who's in this position of working with expert systems may still be a technical communicator, but it's not going to mean the same thing. And finally, assembly into compounds. Yeah, this just says we grab this bead and that bead for a particular output, and we string them together. If you think back to arts and crafts period in summer camp, where you could make a necklace for your mother, that's basically what I'm talking about. But requires a lot of metadata, the state vector, temporary context states, and again, it's always irritating when a speaker says this, so I'll apologize and say it anyway, bear with me. Continuously updated, effectively in real time. This, like I say, in some cases won't matter. Inventory control software, in a sense, who cares? It doesn't have to be updated in real time. An aircraft pre-flight manual certainly may, especially if you're talking about above or below freezing, which means the content has to be in open databases, which may require modification of compilation, which can be a bottleneck. Perfectly true. I had one client a few years ago that had 170,000 files in their project, and basically how they'd set up the project, compilation took 24 hours. So my job was to come in and sort of clean that up. This may affect common tools like FLIR. And we need fast network access with local storage fallback in case you're someplace where there is no network access, like working inside a building where the metal structure acts as something called, I think, called a Faraday cage that simply blocks network signals. Ubiquitous, the material, the content has to be searchable for and findable for everywhere on multiple devices, which basically means online, which basically means that you're going to move to HTML5. I'm running into fewer and fewer companies that do the CHM format, the Microsoft HTML help format, but some do. The problem is this format just won't work. So if anything is going to drive you to switch, it's going to be this. Puts extra emphasis on search engine optimization. I've been doing training and consulting since probably 1994. And back then, nobody knew what SEO was. Today, most people know what SEO is, but they don't necessarily use it. And this is becoming more and more important. This would seem to rule out print and even PDF. All right, I may be wrong on this, but that's pretty much what it looks like. Spontaneity has to be triggered by context. And again, context, like I said, can be traditional context-sensitive help, but it can also be as simple as, is the user holding the device in portrait mode or landscape mode? And you have to be careful who you talk to. You have to know who you're talking to about this. I was the STC, Society for Technical Communications, lead representative to the World Wide Web Consortium from 93 to 96. It was really interesting. But at one point, I was sitting in a meeting of the device independence working group, and they were talking about context sensitivity. And they talked about context sensitivity based on how the user is holding the device, ambient light, smoke, anything. But they never mentioned what we in TechCom think of. And I just went up to the moderator at the break and I said, look, are you guys familiar with, and I just gave him a short description. And he said, no, we've never heard of it. If I give you 10 minutes, if I cut 10 minutes out of the schedule, can you describe it? I said, yeah, so I did. But you cannot assume that everybody's talking about the same thing. And again, similar to, but far beyond traditional context sensitivity, this could include device orientation. Again, am I holding it like so? Location based on GPS or beaconing, for those of you who come out of the Apple world. Environmental considerations. Is there the presence of smoke, gas, flame, temperature, material, metal strain, or fatigue? There's a guy I know who works for, I'm not sure I can say what company it is, so I won't, but he works for a company that supplies control software to oil drilling rigs in the Gulf of Mexico. And they're really interested in being able to keep track of things like metal strain or metal fatigue. Because if you have a section of drill pipe that's about to fracture and it's 2,000 feet down, you have to haul up 2,000 feet of drill pipe, which, as he said, is not particularly fun. Could be chronological. One example that I've used for years is creating a mobile app that's smart enough to know where you are. Maybe you're in a museum, and as you're walking around, the app is also smart enough to know that today is Friday. Go with me. It's 11:30, and it knows that I really like the macaroni and cheese special at the cafeteria, and it will send me a message. Hey, Neil, macaroni and cheese goes on sale 11:45. And there's probably other contexts as well that I'm just not thinking of. All right, just out of curiosity, can any, excuse me, can any of you think of any other contexts that I've missed? I'm sure there's something. Or if nothing comes to mind right now, I would be happy to have you send me an email.
There was a project that I worked on some time ago, which was like an Internet of Things type of project. And it was some sort of a metrics type of service for that you could like plug into an airplane, for example. And it would like track that type of sort of diagnostics data. Anyway, I can kind of make a connection to that, I think, from what you're talking about in terms of documentation that could sort of be, you know, connected up to an airline systems, and then the help would kind of auto filter based on the different diagnostic states in the aircraft.
Yeah, exactly. And I haven't the slightest idea what aircraft metrics you're talking about, but broadly, what you just described makes perfect sense. It's a perfect application. So again, what we need is context detection, the transmission of that content to the online material, the processing of that context to modify the content. This is not always easy to say, and the whole thing is driven by metadata. So automatic profiling could mean user profiling. Typically, we've all seen user profiling. You know, when you go on Amazon and it says, welcome back, Neil, click here if you're not Neil. And that's because it's doing user profiling, but it didn't quite get it right in that case. But it could be audience profiling. Again, you're in Canada, context profiling, whatever, any sort of context-driven profiling. And again, this is going to require continuous use of analytics. So, all right, this all sounds like a lot of fun, I think. Can we do it today? And I'll say, by the way, by way of background, the first job I did is, are any of you accountants? Are any of you married to an accountant? All right, just so I'll know what jokes I can tell. I have an MBA in accounting and something called operations management. It's mathematical process control, which should tell you that I had no clue what I wanted to do and drove my parents crazy. But I started out writing user manuals for online accounting systems. And the rule of thumb in accounting is the less exciting it is, the better. Because when it gets exciting, that often means that someone's going to jail. But from there, like most of you, I segued from writing to, and eventually I segued into the more technical side, the programming, the troubleshooting, the debugging, the systems design, and even strategic consulting. Because one of the problems that my clients have, and probably yours, is that some of this stuff is just so confusing that it's hard to keep up, even though they have to make decisions based on this stuff. And I have fond memories of a client turning to me and asking me, Neil, what is HLMT? And I said, Sachin, I see you. I said, Sachin, I have no idea. And he said, oh, I'm surprised. I thought you'd know this. It has to do with this internet thing. And I just said, oh yeah, okay, it's HTML. Okay, and he just wandered off happily and got coffee. But the thing is, it's so confusing. And today, a lot of what goes on is taken for granted because everybody knows the rules, sort of, the terminology, the concepts. But in the early days of online help, that wasn't the case. And in the early days of where we're heading with this, that's not going to be the case either. Which brings me back to this. Can we implement it? Not entirely as proposed, but the foundation technologies exist. Internet of Things certainly exists. RDF, Resource Description Framework, metadata certainly exists, etc. So part of the problem is going to be when we create new content, we have to do it right. But then the bigger problem is when we have legacy content that has all kinds of problems in it. It has to be fixed. So here's an implementation that would, this is the demo that I was going to talk about, based on data from external sensors. This is not entirely live. Bear with me. So again, this is my aircraft pre-flight service manual idea. So you know when you get on a plane, certain things are going to happen based on whether the outside temperature is above or below freezing, like de-icing. So if you write an aircraft service manual, what we would do in the old days is have two columns of data. You know, if the temperature is above freezing, go here. If the temperature is below freezing, go here. And that's fine, but that lends itself to mistakes. So sensors. If any of you belong to a makerspace, is anybody familiar with those? It's basically high school shop class without the high school. So if you want to do metalwork, woodwork, electronics work, we have these all over the US. I assume they're all over Canada. And they write some very good books, including this one called Make Sense of the Make series. And I use this as my reference. But basically, you've got a temperature sensor, reads the data, and then FTPs the data out to a PC or a server. Here's the black box. Some JavaScript has to take that data and convert it to some sort of project file in order to regenerate the doc based on the temperature. In other words, the context. Is everybody with me so far? Any questions? Okay. It's a straightforward process. We do it all the time. When a client calls up and says, hey, you've got to make this change here, and we say, sure, we make the change and we regenerate or we rebuild the output, The problem is that's where the dynamic aspect goes away. Because if I'm your user and I have to wait for 10 minutes while you're rebuilding the output and sending it down to me over the network, I'm probably not going to do it. What I'll probably do is use the last version that I used yesterday, which unfortunately may be out of date. I don't want to wait. So, plus, not only do I not want to wait, but I have to know that there's a new build coming in the first place. And in fact, what we need to do is create a situation where the information, I just assume, I as the user can assume that the information is there and accurate. I don't care what version I'm looking at, I just know it's there. So is there a way to update the material without a full rebuild? Of course, and this is one of my all-time favorite cartoons from the New Yorker, I think. And no miracle. So what I did was I created this in Madcap Flare. It's a little project. It has one topic, temperature-based procedures. And again, the idea is follow these steps to pre-flight the aircraft. I have 2 conditionalized sets of steps. I'm not showing the steps. I'm just showing, basically some simulated content. If it's 30 degrees, de-ice the aircraft. If it's 40 degrees, you don't have to de-ice the aircraft. Easy enough. I have 1 set of conditional build tags. Here's the build tag if the temperature is 30 degrees. Red is the build tag if it's 40. Cool. The heart of this is 3 cascading style sheets. Now, so aside from Patrick and Andrew, with whom I've spoken a little bit, I don't know you folks. So I don't know what background you have with CSS and if looking at this makes any sense. But 2 things I'll show you. The main CSS, this guy right here, lists all the standard display control stuff, like what's the standard font family for the body, font weight for head 1, and so on. But the crucial thing is right here, at import URL, hide CSS, and then show CSS. Here in the upper right is the hide CSS. And what this one says is hide all the content. Simple as that. Display set to none. Below it, this is the show. So what this says is when the user, when this system opens, it's going to read this main CSS. It's going to jump over to this hide. And it says, okay, hide everything. But then it says, okay, drop down to show. And the value of show, temp 30, is set by the JavaScript. And that says, okay, show that material. This is basically what I just said. How does this all work? So again, the main style sheet, I just called it styles. Doesn't matter what you call it. But here's the result. So if the outside temperature is 30 degrees, this is what you're going to see, or what the user would see. Outside temperature is 40 degrees. This is what the user would see. Okay, cool. Let me show you something. And here's my output. All right, and you notice it says 30 degrees, de-ice the aircraft. Do you guys all see this? This is the really ugly red banner.
We're not seeing that currently. We're seeing the slideshow still.
Okay, hang on 1 second. Okay, this is what you're seeing. Okay, hang on. Okay, now do you see the really ugly output?
Yeah.
Okay, and I'm going to put this into responsive mode. So at full screen, this is what it looks like. At tablet size, the color automatically changes to a really ugly green. And I'll excuse myself for the colors. I just wanted something that was pretty obvious. And as I shrink it further, when I get to what would be, say, phone size, the banner turns to blue. So, okay. But now I'll go back to full, and you notice it says 30 degrees. Now, I'm going to have to share the content again, so bear with me. Because in order to really show this, you need to see the full screen. Okay. Do you guys see a little notepad screen?
Yep.
Okay. All right, so you notice, and this is the show file, show right up here. And you notice it says temperatures 30 degrees, that's great. Let's say the external temperature sensor comes along and says, hey, it's 40 degrees. So that data has to be sent to a JavaScript, which processes it, modifies this file. And I'm going to make believe on the JavaScript, I modify the file. I'll do save, nothing's changed. But now I'll come over to my output and I'll do a refresh. You see how the data just changed. We do it again. Change it back to 30. Save, refresh, boom. The important thing is, all right, you guys see my slides again?
Yep, all good.
Okay. The crucial thing here is that there's no rebuild time. The only rebuild time is to change change the data, run the JavaScript, and then update the browser display. So it's, in effect, it's instantaneous. And the beauty of this, like I just said, this is all in real time. The beauty of this is that, as far as I can tell, this can apply to data from any sensor out there. I gave this a version of this presentation on contextualization for MadCap, and I got some questions. Would this work with data from, I don't know, gas pressure? Sure, I don't see why not. Would this work with data from temperature? Sure, I don't see why not. Somebody had a really good question that hadn't occurred to me. Would this work with data generated by an expert system? And my first thought was, I have no idea. I have never even thought to tie an online doc to an expert system. And I'm trying to get a hold of this person to have her give me some output from an expert system to see if I could tie it in to this demo. So in other words, theoretically, by using this method, I could generate context-sensitive, dynamic content that sort of fits the information 4.0 concept using today's tools. I did this using Flare. I could do this using RoboHelp or any other tool, or if you are a code heavy, skip the tools, do everything in Notepad. Are there problems with this example? Yep, several. One of them is that I limited the example to 2 temperatures, 30 and 40, just to make it conceptually simple. Realistically, I'd be better off using a condition for each temperature. Maybe, because the problem there is that I would then have to have 40, 39, 38, 37, 36, and so on, which would just be a pain in the neck. So better off is to just create 2 conditions called above freezing and below freezing. And then the external sensor sends the temperature into the computer. The JavaScript converts it to, and then figures out, okay, is this above freezing or below freezing? And then it controls what to show. Conceptually, again, this should work for any external data, not just sensor data, but any external data being fed into the content. All right, are there other problems with this? Yep, there's a bunch. units of measurement consistency. Are we talking pounds or kilograms, Fahrenheit or centigrade? And I'm really glad that so many of you are in Canada, because this really gives us the opportunity to illustrate this. Ahmad, what do you guys use in Saudi Arabia? Are you metric or imperial?
As a metric.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
I'm in the US, obviously. We're pretty sure that metric is some sort of evil plot. So we're going to stick with the good old yards and so on. But one of the things I've noticed that none of you said, or if you did, I missed it in the chat, when I was talking about above or below freezing, according to whose standard. And there's two examples I'll give you that I love. They're wonderful illustrations of this. One of them is the Gimli glider. Has anybody ever heard of this? The glider was an Air Canada 767 flight out of Montreal for Edmonton in '83. And they ran out of fuel. Literally, the engines just shut down over Manitoba because when they were being refueled in Montreal, and this is about the time I believe that Canada was switching from imperial to metric, the fueling people basically made an error in what units they were using. And they thought they were giving them gallons, and it turned out they were giving them liters. And the plane just ran out of gas. And if you want to do a search on YouTube for a Gimli glider, there's a wonderful movie that was made about this because the plane wound up landing on an abandoned RCAF fighter base in Gimli, Manitoba, in the middle of a drag race. And it's a miracle nobody was killed or even injured, but that happened. But this all happened because of a mix-up in units. Ditto, a spacecraft called the Mars Polar Lander, which was supposed to land on, I think, the Martian North Pole, and everything went fine. But during the landing phase, it turned out that the two groups of engineers had failed to convert the data from imperial to metric, and the thing hit at, the estimates are about 350 miles an hour. And you can see what's left. This little blob right here is the parachute that had absolutely no effect. And then the lower image, you can see the rocket blast zone where the retro rockets were firing, trying to slow it down. And then this little blob, that's what's left of the satellite. So more possible issues. Where's the data going to come from? And do the different devices work in different ways? Where will the sensors be placed? Without getting into politics, one of the arguments about the whole global warming climate change thing has been an argument about where the sensors, where the temperature sensors were placed. What effect will this have on content design? I can think of some things right off the bat. A lot more in the way of the fragmentary content that can be quickly switched in and out depending on the context. And then there's always the unknown unknowns, the things that we just don't know yet. But it does work, and that's the important thing. So, any questions about this so far? Comments, arguments? Okay. Let me sum this up. 5 major issues. As cool as this is, and it really is pretty cool, does this support my company's direction? And the important thing is, does it support the company's strategic direction and business direction? In other words, will this help the company make money? Because even though this is cool technology, nobody cares about cool tech-com technology. It's only, does this support the company? Does it have high-level management support? Because this will be political. I did a project 3 years ago for a large manufacturer, a very large manufacturing company in the US Midwest. that decided that they wanted their 3 divisions to go mobile. So in addition to all this other stuff that I do, I'm also an app developer. So they actually brought in 20 people, including flying one guy in from China, which flabbergasted me for this meeting. And it turned out that Division A created their own mobile app using a spreadsheet, which was just insane. Division B put everything from Microsoft Word, ran it through generated PDF, and Division C hadn't yet picked an approach, but they knew that they didn't want to do either the app approach or the PDF approach because we don't like those SOBs in Divisions A and B. And as you can imagine, they were all over the place. And each division had high-level support from management at the divisional level, but not the company level. This is where strategic consulting comes in. Does the company's culture support this? I've been in many places, you guys probably have too, where people were just getting accustomed to styles and style sheets. And the idea that all of a sudden we're doing CSS and IoT, that we're basically speaking in gibberish acronyms, that's maybe difficult. I've actually been in places, I've actually worked in places where we converted the entire company from, let's say, a Word-based shop to online using RoboHelp or Flare. And the interesting thing was, and I'm thinking of several companies right now where within a year after I was there to sort of help drive the transition, the entire old doc group had left. Every single person had quit. Because as one person said to me, if we wanted to be programmers, we would have been programmers. Are the goals and terms clearly defined? Again, I give you the example of the 3 different divisions. There's actually a presentation that I gave a couple of years ago that was a collection of really fun horror stories. Horror stories are always fun when they happen to you, not to me. But they were really fun horror stories about companies whose projects had gone off the rails because of lack of definition. So when somebody says, let's go mobile, or let's do information 4.0, you have to make sure everybody knows what they're talking about. And finally, do our practices in TechCom support all this stuff? Do they support topic-based authoring? Do they support taxonomies and ontologies, etc.? And this is tough because we're throwing a huge amount of change here. So with that, let me sum things up. This whole thing is still conceptual. It may wind up being called something else, especially since the original Information 4.0 consortium has dissolved. I still run around calling it Information 4.0 anyway, because I think it's a good, catchy name for a technical umbrella. And sometimes what things need is a good, catchy name. But it does, as I say, represent a continued increase in the technical side. And for those of us who maybe have just sort of written ourselves out, you've documented everything there is, and you swear that if you're going to document one more database, you're going to run out of your room screaming. This could be a new direction. All right, so usual blatant sales pitch, and does anybody have any questions?
Thank you, Neil.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks very much for the talk. I really appreciated hearing that. I jotted down so much stuff here. I don't want to just jump into all my thoughts though. So yeah, if anybody has any questions or comments or anything they'd like to share, please feel free to turn on your video and on your audio, and we'd love to hear it.
Hi, Neil. Glad that you're feeling better and you're back here. That's great.
Yeah, I never did apologize to you guys for the last week's adventure. Something bit me 2 hours before I was supposed to come on, and I wound up in the emergency room. So it was a pretty strange afternoon. You've all been very nice. Thank you.
No, thank you for rescheduling as well, Andrew.
My pleasure.
So actually, I was thinking when you were saying about 30 and 40, so I was thinking, yeah, that's Fahrenheit, right? So, but since I knew it was Fahrenheit, I didn't say anything for that reason. But this information 4.0, is it only applicable to the industry side of things, or is it, because nowadays lots of tech writing is done within the digital world as well? So.
Okay, so just to rephrase that, just to make sure I understood, is this only applicable within the industry world? I would say no.
When I say industries, like, because you gave an example of sensors, so I was thinking, is it more relevant to that kind of industries, and not towards the digital industries? I mean, I did make notes where points do apply to other fields. I mean, other content as well.
Well, okay.
I'm not sure, maybe.
Sorry, I'll give you two answers. The honest answer is I don't know. The sort of guesswork answer is I still don't know, but I can think of a number of possible uses of this that go far beyond industry. For example, for example, I'm driving home from work and my refrigerator is online. My refrigerator contains a number of everything in my refrigerator contains a little radio frequency identification chip. And as I move it in and out of the refrigerator will read it. And perhaps there's a weight sensor, so it knows that I'm running low on milk. And as I'm driving home, the refrigerator signals me and says, hey, you're running low on milk. Do you want to stop off at the local store and buy some more? And I say yes, and it says, okay, what's the chain up in Canada? There's like a convenience store chain.
I'm in Toronto, so
okay.
Loblaws, I would say.
Okay, then it says, okay, you are 2 kilometers from the nearest Loblaws. Do you want to go? And you say yes. But then it might also come up and say, and you notice it's saying things. You're not reading anything. So this is why I said that it didn't have to be screen-based, but it might say, so you say, okay, yeah, I want to go. And then it says, okay, you're 2 kilometers, turn left. And then it says, wait, Loblaws is doing social distancing right now, and there's a limit of 100 people in each store. Right now, there's a line of 20 people outside. Do you still want to go? And all this is it's kind of a silly example, maybe,
No, I understand.
but it's all being driven by context. So, plus, it's talking to you. There's no screen. And again, CSS theoretically will let you generate and control voice-driven output. That's kind of a messy subject, but yeah, anything where the content is really context dependent. In industry, sure. In manufacturing, sure. In services, absolutely, depending on the services. I had several years ago, I had a potential app client that wanted me to put, this was an HVAC, heating, ventilating, and air conditioning company. They wanted me to put their entire installer service manual online so that their installers could read it as they were crawling through the framework of a building to fix a duct or something. And they said, can you do this? And I'm a consultant. You could ask if I could levitate. And my first thought is, yes, I can, and then I'll go figure out how. But it turned out, again, the metal cage would block transmission of the, of the Wi-Fi. So I would have to have set up local storage, which would automatically update when I got outside the building. So my context would vary depending on whether I'm in the building or outside. All right, if we had beer, I could probably keep going, but does that make sense as examples?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you did mention the services industries as well. So, I mean, I don't want to take up more time. I'll let other people ask questions as well.
Okay. Other questions, comments, arguments?
Hi, Angela Conner. I work at Shopify. I'm on the same team as Andrew, but my focus is the user-facing documentation rather than the API documentation. So I'm really interested in showing things by context, but I'm also interested in the risks of hiding things that aren't the context. I see you nodding, so maybe I don't need to go further, but I wonder what your thoughts are on that, kind of broadly.
Go a little further, because I can take this in a couple of different directions.
Well, with the example that you were giving, I was thinking about data integrity and failure points there in particular. But what I'm dealing with kind of in my day-to-day is a little bit more mundane than that, maybe, and has to do with localization as a context. So are you in a locale where a particular feature is actually available to you? It's a useful piece of information. We don't currently offer any contextual help based on that, but we talk about it, and we talk about the risk of not revealing a piece of information that could potentially be useful to a user who isn't in that locale, because we don't necessarily understand what they're trying to do fully. So,
okay.
If they move to a different locale, for example, we may not have all the pieces of information. So I wonder if there's kind of a thought to, do you have a way that you can reveal all of the information? Something like that.
Yeah, I'll warn you. My wife claims that if you could ask me any question, like what's my name, and I can go on for an hour. This is what comes of being in this field for 41 years. As I did with Sachin, I'll give you two answers. The first answer is it depends. Second answer is, yeah, it still depends on a couple of things. One of them is a philosophical question. Do we tell people all the information that's available, or do we not? And there's one school of thought that says we don't, because we don't want them to know what they can't do, because that might get them sort of thinking about, gee, what else can I do that they're not telling me? And eventually they blow something up. The other school of thought is the marketing school of thought, which says, yeah, let's tell them everything there is, because even though they only bought module 3, but if we tell them everything, maybe they'll buy modules 1, 2, and 4. I don't know what the answer is to that one. That's something that basically your company has to decide. I've been in on those discussions in companies, and I tend to say only show them the information that they need, because showing me all the other information that I don't need right now typically just gets in my way. I don't need to know this, don't waste my time. But then to do what you described, which is, somebody's in this position and then suddenly they move to this position, how do we make sure they get all the information they need? That puts a huge burden on you to define the business rules. What do they need to know? And when do they need to know it? which means you have to define the metadata. And I warned you, I can go on forever. One of the problems, what are any of you Flare users or let's say Flare users? Anybody? Okay, but do you know what that is? Okay. The problem with all these tools is that if you think of conditional build tags as metadata, which they are, they make it really easy to create and assign the conditional build tags. The problem is it's really easy to do that without documenting what you're trying to do in the first place. And then you leave, but you never documented it because you know what you're trying to do. And then I come in and I look at what you did and I have no clue. And I'll give you two real life examples. It was about 3 years ago. I was hired by a company in Wisconsin. They had about 1,000 topics. They had about 1,500 insertions of conditional build tags. The first developer never documented it because she knew it. She left. Second developer had no clue what the first one had done, tried to figure it out, messed it up completely. She quit. Third one came in, same thing happened. The fourth one came in, took a look, and said, this is insane. And they wound up calling me. Can you come in and fix this? And I spent 3 days there, at the end of which I said, no, I cannot fix this because I cannot figure out what on earth the original developer was trying to do. That was bad enough. 2 weeks later, karma, they got a call from a company in Mississauga, Ontario. And they said, we have about 1,000 topics. Yeah. We have about 15,000 conditional build tag insertions, but they were never documented. Can you figure this out? And I just said, I don't even want to waste your time. No, throw it all out, start again, and document it. Management of these business rules is going to be absolutely crucial.
Yeah, and just to tack onto that, it seems to me that maybe I'm missing something. But I don't know if there's a lot of people that could confidently say that they're an expert in that, like in understanding how to build these in a way that you won't have to just rebuild it every few years.
There are, to a degree, there are ways to do this. In other words, I could come into your company and I would have no clue what you're trying to do, but I would tell you, you know what you're trying to do. Explain it to me and then document it. And I always tell people, document it and then give it to the newest, rawest new hire and tell him or her, you repeat it and see if it works on a tiny test scale. And invariably, the whole thing collapses in a shambles and you go back and rewrite the instructions. That's what I usually tell people. One of the problems with expertise is that you don't know how you know something. You just know what the answer is. That's a common problem. So you're right, this is going to be a common issue all around.
That's very interesting. Thank you.
So I wish I could give you a better answer. All right. Any other questions? All right. Thank you very much for having me. I appreciate this. It's always fun. You guys asked some good questions. And Andrew, back to you.
Thanks, Neil. One thing I was wondering about is what an expert system is. I think you mentioned the term expert system a few times.
Yeah, what's an expert system? An expert system is an artificial intelligence system.
Okay.
It's very focused toward a particular task. If you follow the early days of AI back in the 60s and 70s, we had these gigantic clouds of intelligence like HAL 9000 in 2001. An expert system is, and I am far, far from an expert on this, but an expert system is AI, but it's focused toward a particular task.
Yeah, it's super interesting, the discussion that you were just having there, Evangela, about the rules engines that are going to have to inform this kind of stuff, and then like, how do you document the rules engines, and you even give over some of that, the idea of giving over some of that control to the realm of AI, and then the responsibility of the outputs, like especially if it was mission critical applications where it went through this whole chain of logical decisions and it spat out the wrong doc at the end. And so they were on an airplane configuring it the wrong way, and then the airplane crashed or something. I could imagine a scenario like that given some of the documentation related problems in airplanes recently.
Yeah, absolutely. It's very difficult. It calls for a combination of expertise and self-awareness. Because think of the number of times that somebody has asked you about something in which you're an expert, and you just give them the answer, but you can't tell them how you got there.
That's what I thought was so interesting about that last exchange, was it really seemed to get to the crux of what it is we were doing as technical writers in our job. And I think maybe why it is we have jobs, is that is really a thing, is that when you know something, it then becomes very hard to document it. And I think the role of the documentarian is to come in with the fresh eyes, not knowing the thing. And then you get almost like that magic power of being able to then explain it because you didn't know it on the way in.
Well, I agree. I usually tell people that I, as the doc guy or whatever I am, in effect, I'm a frontline user representative because I don't know how your system works. So if I mess it up, there's a good chance that the user will mess it up. And I've actually had 2 instances in my career where I messed up your product so badly that the company actually said, Neil made such a mess that he's not the only one. We think other users may make the same mistake, revise the application. That was pretty unusual. But yeah, I acted as the user representative. And it's tough. It is very tough to do. I can see as we get into the area of expert systems that our jobs may change from writing to curation, where we're in charge of setting the expert system rules and then checking the output.
Interesting. Yeah, there was another talk earlier as part of Write the Docs that went into, I think it was information 2.0 and micro content. And, that given the thrust of that talk and then what you've been talking about tonight, it really feels like, there's different terms that like information 4.0 and micro content and all of these sorts of terms kind of flying around, but it feels like overall the move seems sort of inevitable because it really seems to mirror the way that the web works, and sort of with chatbots and things like that. And if I even think of our own company's interface, there is a lot of sort of quasi documentation baked into the interface and timely links that you can follow. And I know, just given the way that our company operates and stuff, that they're trying to give people what they want when they need it, and not more and not less. So this all just seems very inevitable to me, that these types of things will be rolling out, and that as you say, like our role may be as sort of like documentarians of robots to sort of make sure that the robots are behaving in a way that is going to protect the reputation of the company in terms of what comes out at the other end.
Yeah, that's definitely part of it. And what I think makes it fun, a little terrifying, is that as we move into new technologies, we're going to make mistakes. Something will always get messed up. But when I started doing online back in '86, or let's be realistic, we're talking, say, RTF-based online doc in the early 90s. And I made mistakes back then that I can look at now and just shudder. But the thing is, I had time to fix my mistakes because there really wasn't the time to market pressures that we have now. Nowadays, there's less room for making mistakes. We have to do it right. Or righter, I'll say.
Yeah, it's true in the context as well of Internet of Things, where even the software methodologies that are so prevalent now, like Agile and that sort of thing, where it's almost sort of feels a bit like, you know, the customers will do the QA for us. You know, that doesn't really fly if it's somebody's heart monitor that we're talking about here, you know?
Absolutely.
And as well as the accompanying documentation needs to be really tight, right?
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Any other comments, questions?
There's probably too many that I jotted down here.
Then what I'll say.
I do want to give people the chance to go back into the breakout rooms to chat a little bit before we wind things up. And I'm just trying to remember. I'm trying to put on my good host hat here and try to remember what I'm supposed to say to end these things off. I think it's something. I think it's something along. Yeah.
I'm sorry. Let me just show you one thing.
Sure.
What I was going to say was I find the whole topic fun, and if anybody has any questions, feel free to email me. This is my email. It changed recently, so it's nperlin@nperlin.digitalspacemail8.net. Long story, don't ask.
I never heard of that email provider before.
It's called Digital Space, and they decided they bought out my old ISP, and they decided they wanted to rebrand everyone's email addresses. So this is my email address. With a lot of apologies, if anybody wants to discuss this, email me. I'd be happy to talk to you.
You don't like Gmail, Neil?
I'm sorry? Oh,
you don't like Gmail?
I use Gmail also, but I've been using this other email for, I think I've been using the progenitor of this email since 1995. And everybody knows me by that email. So I use Gmail as well, but then I have 2 other email systems on my tablets. And I'm at the point where I seriously run the risk of just missing your email because I missed checking one system. So I keep trying to funnel people onto this one, but I do use Gmail.
It almost sounds like that's a system that would need some good documentation around it.
Tell me about it.
All right. All right. So let me see if I can go back to. So we will stop screen sharing at this time. Then I will start to share mine again.
Yeah.
There's Neil there. And then I have a little thank you for coming screen there. Yeah, so thanks everyone for coming. We'll round off the night by going back into the breakout rooms for those of you that want to hang around for a few more minutes. We also publish the recordings of these on our YouTube channel, and I'll do that later on in the week, and I'll send out a link onto the meetup group. And then we're also scheduled for another meetup at the end of the month. And I don't have the date in front of me, but let me see here. I imagine it would be May the 26th, the last Tuesday of the month. So yeah, we'll go with that. And I think I have a few potential speakers in line for that. And I think we might do it sort of as a hybrid thing where we have a speaker and then also do some sort of an activity around the current situation and job hunting and sharing job hunting tips and sort of like a technical writing support network of sorts in regards to the situation with COVID. that was something that seemed to come up a lot in the last iteration of this meetup. When Neil had to cancel, we kind of just turned it into a long series of intros, and everyone had a good chance to sort of share their thoughts and feelings and some insecurities around certain things. And it seems like that might be something that we could benefit from talking about in the next meetup. So those are my thoughts for now on that. So unless anyone else has anything else to mention out here in the group, I'm going to go ahead and break us back out into the breakout rooms.
I'll just say thank you, Neil, in case we don't end up in the same breakout room, because I wouldn't get another chance. So thanks a lot. This is really interesting.
Yeah. I also want to thank Neil, Andrew, for this. I really appreciate it. But I'm gonna log off the meeting, and we'll hope to see you next time, the next meetup.
Yeah, great to see you again, Sachin. Thanks for being here again.
Thank you all.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I would like to thank everyone for the session from Andrew, and thank you, Neil, for the presentation. And hopefully you get well, and hopefully you're not going back to the AR in the future.
Thank you.
Thanks for being with us, Ahmad. I hope we'll see you again in future meetups.
Yeah, sure. Will do. Thank you, Dad.
And I guess one thing, Angela, you could consider if you don't get into the same meetup room with Neil, is you can always just send me one of those private messages on Zoom and tell me to move you over. All right, here we go. Oh, it looks like there's maybe, it only says 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But then it says 7 here. Maybe we'll just stay out here because I don't think there's enough people.
Coming up on 8 o'clock Eastern, so some folks are dropping off.
Mm-hmm. All right. Yeah, I'm actually going to have to drop off in a few minutes myself, but since we're here.
Yep.
Ahmad, you still awake?
Yes, I am. I'm still awake.
Okay. Any other questions? Angela, did I answer your questions sort of, kind of?
Yeah, well, I feel like it's something that we could talk about for quite a bit. And I'm really interested in sort of the internal politics, but behind that decision making, about what to reveal and when to reveal it. Because I think that, even as the organization evolves, your strategy would need to evolve. And I think just to your point of documenting everything that is done and why you did it that way and what you were trying to accomplish is generally a good practice. But I'm just like, I'm whether there could be a point where the administration starts to undermine the whole system. Oh, is it any better now?
Go ahead, keep talking.
Yeah, I was just thinking about whether the complexity of the administration starts to undermine what you're trying to accomplish at some point. Does that make sense?
That makes absolute sense. Yeah, there are things, okay. If you've ever used Microsoft Project Manager, it's wonderful software. If you want to send somebody to the moon, if you want to develop an app, it's kind of overkill. And it just makes it so much more complex that you're exactly what you said happens. The management winds up outweighing the actual work. So yeah, my first thought is, just use the minimum project management, and mechanically, it's pretty easy to figure out what the minimum project management is. It's on the management side itself is where things get messy. Sometimes in surprising ways. When I spoke, for example, with this manufacturing company, one of the things that I always push is if you're going to do this, you have to develop statistics. You have to know how long it takes you to write a topic, what is the average size of a topic, how long does it take you to write, et cetera, et cetera. And one of the divisions fought me tooth and nail. They absolutely refused. Because what that tells you is that it was a very management heavy organization and you didn't want to be held responsible for anything. So the project management was easy. The political management was a nightmare.
And I could see it being really successful in a place where whether they be technical writers or however, but the people setting up the system have a fair degree of autonomy, and there's a high level of trust in the decision making, and possibly like starting with a system that's not super complex, that doesn't have a lot of what we call stakeholders. It's I could see it just being at risk of being, sinking itself just with the number of people that need to be involved in the decision making, if it gets too granular. So it's fascinating, I think, to kind of imagine how those conversations could go.
I completely agree. Completely agree. It's politics will sink you more than anything else.
How are you doing, Kate? I feel like I haven't seen you in a little while. I wonder if your audio is on right now. Unmute.
No, it's not.
I just unmuted you now, so I can hear you now.
I've unmuted myself. Yeah, no, I'm just taking it all in. I'm good. Yeah. I'm wondering if Neil has any thoughts on the best kind of software for doing all this stuff. You'd certainly want to take good meeting minutes if you're having these conversations that Angela is talking about, but for actually developing the tools with all these contexts and variations. You mentioned Flare, and but do you have any other thoughts on it?
Yeah, and you take what I say with a huge grain of salt, because I do a tremendous amount of consulting for Madcap, Flare. I've worked with Adobe for years on RoboHelp, various other tools like this. So the danger whenever you're talking to a consultant is that on the one hand, they push what they sell, but there's another way to look at that, which is that they work with the tools that they think are good. Because I've worked with tools that I thought were not good, and I ran away from them very quickly, or in some cases the companies folded. Any sort of topic-based authoring tool will work. Flare will work, RoboHelp will work. There's a bunch of others in that vein, but most of them are falling to second tier. AuthorIt, if you know that one, very powerful tool. It started it's AuthorIt, AUTHORIT, and this started as a help authoring tool like RoboHelp, but they never broke the top tier. So they recast themselves basically as a content management system with an authoring tool attached. There's that. There's a tool out of Europe called Help and Manual. That's it's widely used, but again, it's sort of falling into second tier. So in the immediate world, Flare is probably the most powerful. RoboHelp is up there, but Flare is Madcap's core tool. RoboHelp is a tool in Adobe's arsenal, so it gets different amounts of love. There's also various CM content management or web-based tools, And if you want to shoot me an email, I can do some quick research and send you back some names. All right. Basically, what you do is you don't pick the tool first. Figure out what it is you want to do and then pick the tool. I don't know if that helps. It's sort of a short answer.
No, I was curious about, because I had used Author at quite a few years ago, and I really enjoyed the experience, and I thought it dealt with all the context we had to deal with at the time. Mm-hmm. But nobody seems to know about it much. I was glad to hear you mention it.
Yeah, Author, its problem is that number one is the complexity. But number two is the fact that they're based out of, I think it's New Zealand. And I've met the crew at various trade shows. They're bright, they're sharp. But the problem is if you need support, you're dealing with somebody who's 12 time zones away. And as far as I know, there's no North American rep. So you have to deal with the company in New Zealand. And a lot of people have found that a problem. Good tool, good company, but it's just the availability of support.
We did have a guy here in Ottawa, but I think he was like the guy.
Do you remember his name? Because I remember there was one guy in Canada.
I don't remember.
It's probably not that important.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
All right, you're welcome.
I'm gonna head out. It's bedtime for my eldest, so I'll be doing that mom thing now. But thanks again.
All right, very good.
Nice to see you again, Angela.
Really nice meeting everybody. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Neil. Thank you, Andrew. Angela.
All right.
Yeah, good to see you.
Take care.
Good to see you, Kate. We'll see you next time.
Yes, I'm sure you will. Thank you.
I think my lease is running out.
Mm-hmm.
And it's time for me to go up and help out with the bath.
Right. You could probably keep talking for another hour if that would help, but. All right, then, Andrew, thank you very much for setting this up. I thoroughly enjoyed it. Thank you to Pat when he shows up again for putting me in touch with you in the first place. All right.
Yes, absolutely. Well, I'll
thank you.
I'll share. I'll get the recording edited and I'll put it on our YouTube channel, and I'll share it out with Pat because I know he was mentioning he wanted to have a look at it, and I think also Dorian was hoping to look at that. And I'll send it to you, Neil, over LinkedIn, and then provided it looks good to you, we can send out some social media posts on it.
Yeah, absolutely. My pleasure.
That's great, and best of luck with your upcoming move to Vermont.
Thank you. All right, you guys take care. Pleasure to talk to you all.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, hope to see you guys at a future meetup. Bye.
Okay. Bye-bye.